For many years, people always thought they knew what was best for the Native Americans, and we're finding out that maybe we should have done more listening and a lot less talking with the Native American cultures.
The Jesus way,
oh, the Jesus way
is the way of peace.
Is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way,
oh, the Jesus way
is the way of peace.
Is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. When He is King, all wars will cease. May His peace begin with me. Gonna beat my sword,
Gonna beat my sword
into a plow.
into a plow.
Gonna beat my sword
Gonna beat my sword
into a plow.
into a plow.
Gonna beat my sword into a plow. Christ is King in my life now. May His peace begin with me.
Mark Charles shared the complexities of American history regarding race, culture, and faith in the November 2018 edition of Brethren Voices. Mark shared about being Navajo, which he learned about while being on the Navajo reservation in Arizona. In that program, he discussed the history that few Americans want to talk about. Hello, I'm Brent Carlson. Welcome to Brethren Voices. This program features Liebrook Community Ministries, which is a ministry that goes back many years. It had its beginning in 1952 as the Liebrook Navajo Mission, formed by the General Board of the Church of the Brethren. Its focus responded to the special needs of the area and provided a safe source of potable water, sharing the gospel, and provided public education, medical care to meet the numerous community and family needs, and maintained a local cemetery. Liebrook Community Ministries was formed in 2009 to continue the work of the Liebrook Navajo Mission and to bring centralized leadership and operations to the Liebrook community. We were fortunate to meet Jim and Kim Thurian, who have been directors of the Liebrook Community Ministries since August 2013. Their story is amazing, and one that they said was answering a call from God to a community they had never seen. We interviewed Kim and Jim at the 2018 Church of the Brethren annual conference. We asked Jim if he had always been Brethren.
Didn't have a church upbringing, wasn't a member of a church, no Brethren connection until 2001. My daughter wanted me to spend her birthday with her. She was going to turn 9, and so she asked me to come and pick her up at church, and it happened to be the Independence Church of the Brethren in Independence, Kansas.
Really?
And so I went in the door with no intentions of staying at the church or doing anything with church. It was met by an older man, Jim Wiley. He shook my hand, invited me to come and sit with him, and I told him I was going to go sit with my daughter, and went over and sat with her and caught the last 10 minutes of the service and felt like this is where I needed to be. And that was August of 2001, and I've been a member of the Church of the Brethren since September of 2001.
Wonderful. Amazing. That's a really
So
amazing.
it was a child that brought me to the Lord.
Yeah.
So
Kimberly.
I have an almost opposite experience. I was raised in church. I probably went to church when I was just a few days old and went to church all my life. I was raised in the holiness movement. The church I was raised in was Bible Holiness Church. And when we met, we actually met at Cub Scouts.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in northeast Oklahoma and then southeast Kansas, between those two areas. And so by the time we met, I was in southeast Kansas. I lived about 20 miles from his hometown. And we met at Cub Scouts, and we started talking to each other and ended up getting married. And since he was at the Church of the Brethren and I was in the Bible Holiness Church, we started going to both churches at the same time. We did that for quite a while, and eventually felt like we needed to make a commitment to one church. Not that one was better than the other or either or, it was just we felt like we needed to get involved in one church, and so that's when we decided to make the Church of the Brethren our home, because we liked the way that the Church of the Brethren was like a family. Not just family oriented, but it was like the church was a family.
It is.
We like that, and also the opportunities for service was really interesting to both of us. So we decided that we wanted to become a part of that.
So somehow, after those decisions were made, you found yourself in Liebrook, New Mexico.
About a year prior to us going to Liebrook, or even hearing about it, we felt God was leading us in a different direction. We'd been youth directors in the Independence Church for 9 years and felt like God was moving us into another area. So we sold our house that we had and moved into a rental house, and just felt like we needed to be available for God to tell us where we needed to go or what we needed to do.
Well,
At that
does that
point-
take some faith? I'm in the process of trying to get my house in order. That's a big job to just say, okay, we're going to do this.
At that point, we felt very unsettled. We just really felt unsettled. We weren't sure what we were supposed to be doing, but we felt like we were supposed to be doing something.
So we were asked we resigned as the youth directors. We had done that for 9 years and felt God had moved us into another direction, and resigned as youth directors, and we're trying to pray and discern about what God had for us. And we were asked by the Independence Church to become part of the ministry team. So we went through the licensing process and got licensed and headed to Bethany Seminary for our orientation class.
So we thought, well, maybe this was it. Maybe this is why we were feeling so unsettled, and so because God was moving us into ministry. And we spent the week at orientation for a TRIM program, which we're still both in the TRIM program. TRIM is the program through the Church of the Brethren that's online for us to get our ordination within the church. And
So
it's
like an online classes and
yes,
Yes.
through Bethany.
Okay.
Yes. So we were headed back from that experience, and 2 other people from the Western Plains District had also gone up to start in the TRIM program at the same time, and they were riding with us, and they had gone to a presentation at district conference about Liebrook Mission, and so they started talking to us about Liebrook Mission.
And so we were listening to them and looking at each other and saying, no, we really can't go
That's
right
not
now.
that's not what we're supposed to do.
We had a couple of kids still in school, and I had just taken a new job. She was getting ready to sign a contract for teaching again. So we just felt like, no, that wasn't what we could do. But it's a long way from Indiana to Kansas. So they continued to talk and discuss it. We got back to Kansas late Sunday evening, woke up Monday morning, looked at each other and said, why couldn't we go? And so I'm the kind of person that makes a list of reasons, whether it's for or against. So I made a list of reasons why we couldn't go or what needed to be done so that we could go. The first was that Kim had to have a job because the mission was not receiving any funds, very minimal funds actually at the time. Hadn't had a church service in over 1.5 years, and the mission was almost closed. And so Kim made one phone call to the Guyana district in Cuba and was guaranteed a teaching position if I received the job as director. And number 2 was our church had to be okay with us leaving because they had just asked us to be part of the ministry team. And so they were having a business meeting on Tuesday evening, and we heard about it on Sunday. Tuesday evening we went to the meeting, and they gave us their blessing and told us that they don't want us to leave, but if we have to, this would be a good cause. The third thing was my job had to be okay with us moving away and quitting after only being there 4 months.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to be employed by a Christian man and woman, and went and talked to them. They own a garage in Bartlesville, and they said, we hate to lose you, but we couldn't lose you to a better cause. So I immediately went home, wadded up the piece of paper and threw it in the trash, and I knew that God was leading us at this point.
You can't see him, but I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
I then
We
called,
still get goosebumps when we talk about it, because it was so much of a God thing. And we called Jim called the chairman of the board and said, "Hey, this is Jim Therian from Independence, Kansas, and we'd like to be directors at Liebrook." And Ken's like silent, and then, "Who is this?" And so I don't think he was expecting a phone call saying, "Hey, we're ready to move to Liebrook." So.
And this is 4 days after you heard about it.
Yes.
Correct.
And
then
and every day you scratched off your list of why we can't do this.
Correct.
Or
Yes.
what we need to do.
Yes.
Well, then he said, his response was, "Well, let me call you back." And he hung up with me, and I can only assume that he called Sonia Griffith, who is my district executive for Western Plains, and talked to her, and she called me, and we spent about an hour and 45 minutes on the phone. She was telling me why we couldn't leave Independence, and I was explaining why God was calling us to Liebrook. And we came to an understanding, and she said, "Well, I don't see why you can't go." And so it was at that point that we got the Western Plains District okay to go to Liebrook. We called Ken back and told him that we wanted to go to Liebrook, but they wouldn't let us commit unless we went down there and saw the facility, because it is in a remote location and very isolated.
We agreed to go down and visit it, but at that point we were like, it doesn't matter what it looks like, we know this is where we're supposed to go. It was just an unreal feeling that we just knew this is where we were supposed to go. So long story short, less of 2 weeks after we learned about Liebrook's need, we were in a U-Haul van driving down there with all the possessions that we had left.
I've seen the marks of a call when God calls,
Yes.
and you only get to see one page at a time.
Yeah.
You don't get to see the whole picture. But you're just explaining one page at a time what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So you're on your way with your U-Haul trailer, because you've decided you're gonna be there, even though they're saying, well, you have to come and see it first.
No, we
had to go.
You had been there?
Yes,
We had to
went
go
down
visit
there.
it.
Okay, you did go visit.
Yes.
And spent a few days down there seeing the facility. But we had known at that point that God was calling us to this. Had a water line break while we were down at the mission looking at it, and two of our boys jumped in and started fixing it. So the board members looked at each other and said, well, maybe they're supposed to be here, and said, okay, we'll let you take the position.
When you first looked at it, you didn't say, oh my goodness, what are we doing here?
No.
We didn't. We were just so excited about it at that point.
So we were loaded up in the U-Haul, and we got to Liebrook. We looked at each other, and we had no idea what we were going to do or how we were going to do it, but we knew that God was in charge. Like I had said, there wasn't a church service for over a year and a half, so we wanted to focus on getting the church up and running. 8 days after arriving, we were able to have our first church service, so we were blessed in that way. And then just started going into the community and finding out what the needs were in the community.
The Navajo prefer to be called the Dene. In their language, that means the people, or the children of the holy people. The Dene are a matriarchal, semi-nomadic people whose traditional activities center around their flocks and small farms. The Navajo Nation covers an area of more than 14,000 square miles in the Desert Plateau region of northern Arizona and New Mexico. Like most Native Americans, many years ago they were forced to send their children to boarding schools. We heard these same stories when we visited the native Gwich'in people of Arctic Village, Alaska. These schools were run by early religious organizations which focused on the assimilation of the Native Americans into the white community. They were not even allowed to speak their own native languages. Their hair was cut, and they were required to wear Anglo clothing. This caused a culture gap between older and younger Dene. Their skills for farming and herding sheep were displaced and replaced by desires to move away from the old ways and off the reservation.
So the mission is Liebrook Community Ministries is the name of the mission now. It used to be called Liebrook Mission,
And it was called the Liebrook Navajo Mission.
Navajo Mission. It's gone by different names. But
And it's an official mission of the Church of the Brethren.
yes.
It was started in 1953 by the Eikenberries, who were tasked by the General Board to go out to that area and find land to purchase and start working with the Navajo people in the community.
Or Dene, as they call themselves. And the people that come to our church, the mission is on 50 acres, and on the mission is a church building, and that's where the Tokohokari Church of the Brethren meets. And we have a mostly Native American congregation, except for our family. Everyone else is Native American.
And what's the closest town? Because you're not in a town. You're out in the country.
We're in a village, actually, Liebert Village, and the closest town is either Cuba, New Mexico, which is 43 miles to the south, or Bloomfield, New Mexico, which is 45 miles to the north.
Wow, so you're right in the middle of those two.
Yes.
Yes.
And are you on a reservation? Or
No, we are in the checkerboard area. The property that we are on is owned by the Church of the Brethren, but it is in the checkerboard area where you have BLM land, which is Bureau of Land Management land, federal land. You have private land, tribal trust land, and allotment land. So it's a checkerboard of different ownership of the property. But we are about an hour and 45 minutes from the reservation itself.
From the big reservation.
Yeah, and the mission has buildings on the mission. So we have a church building, we have a thrift store building, we have a garage, a barn. Then there's 3 houses that people can live in, and then there's a bunkhouse, which is just primarily used for people to sleep in when we have groups come down. We also have one of the primary water sources for the people in the community. There's several people that do not have running water or electricity, and so they come to the mission itself to get their water.
You have a well?
We have access to a well. We're on a water line with about 35 other families that are on a well provided. It's provided by a well from an aquifer for our water. So it's not piped in from Farmington or anywhere else.
We asked Kim and Jim Thurian about how the current needs and goals of the mission were established.
Went down there with no idea what we were going to do or how we were going to do it. First thing we wanted to do was to find out what the needs were in the community. It wouldn't do us any good to start programs if they weren't needed in the community. We went to the local chapter house, which is the local governing body for that village. And so Liebert doesn't have its own chapter house, but Counselor does, and Counselor is right next to Liebert. So we went to the Counselor chapter house and met with the community social worker, Marlene Thomas. She's been in the community for over 32 years now and knows everybody in the area, and she would be our best resource for finding out what the needs were. And in the beginning, the needs were basic needs such as firewood, water, food, and so we began to find ways that we could meet those needs. Remembering that this is Native Americans and there was a lot of trauma that was done to the Native Americans over the years, we wanted to come into the community and be a presence and then become accepted. It took about 2.5 years for the community to really accept us into their way of life. One of the things they continued to ask us for the first 2 years was, where was our other home? The previous directors that were out there had another house that once their 2-year tenure was done, they would go back to their home. We explained that we sold everything and moved to Liebert. That was our home. We didn't have another house to go to. We would be homeless when we left the mission. They asked then how long we were going to be there. And we had told the board that we weren't committing to any time limit because we didn't want to restrict God. God had brought us there, and we figured God would tell us when it was time that we needed to move on, or if we needed to stay there until whenever. So it was a little hard for them to believe that, given the past and the fact that people were gone after 2 years. About the 2.5-year mark, they began to realize that we were serious.
Maybe you're going to stick around.
Yeah.
Yes. And now they've told us that they will kidnap us and keep us. They're not going to let us leave. So we have been well received in the community in the surrounding area.
There's a book about this and a concept about toxic charity, and that sometimes when we want to help people, we're actually doing them a disservice and not helping them.
Yes.
Yes.
How did you kind of balance the needs with how to enable and empower the local people at the same time?
We believe in being self-sustainable, and what that means is with food, with utilities, with whatever else you may need to be self-sustaining. And we also believe that the people could do it themselves had they had the right resources to do it. So we wanted to, like I said, meet the needs of the community. We didn't want to start a Bible study when somebody's hungry. They're not going to want to come to Bible study and listen to the Bible if they're hungry. So we wanted to meet the needs in the community, but we also wanted to make sure that there were no strings attached. There's no obligation. If we go in and we help somebody in the community, it's not a requirement that you come to church or come to the mission. It's just what we're supposed to do. We wanted to live out what Jesus was teaching us.
That's also a different kind of concept for many people. It's like,
The other thing is, I think that obviously I'm a teacher, and so I'm very focused on the education side. And I think that we kind of both came down there with that kind of mindset to teach people things instead of just giving them things. Because, you know, like you said, the saying, you can give a man a fish and he can eat for a day. You can teach him to fish and he can eat for a lifetime. So kind of that same concept of wanting to help them learn how to do things or learn what they want to learn. That's another thing, is not coming in and telling them, well, you need to learn how to do this and you need to learn how to do this. Coming in and saying, hey, you know, we've got resources, we've got connections. What do you guys want to learn? What's some things you want to learn about? And kind of using our connections to research that and then passing it on to them. So we also went there with the mindset that we were going to be learning as much as they were going to be learning. So we wanted to be teaching them, but we also at the same time wanted them to be teaching us about their life and about their culture and about things that they know, because they have as much valuable information as we do that they can share with us. And we really went down there to learn ourselves about the people that we were wanting to serve and wanting to work with.
And your primary job is at the mission?
Yes. And I'm meeting with people in the community, trying to continue to find out what the needs are. We know needs are ever changing, and so one of the ways that I thought it would be a good idea is to have a meeting at the chapter house to find out what the needs were. So I was holding a community needs meeting, and it was about the third community needs meeting that I had, that about 2.5 years after being there, an elder walked up to me and asked me to get involved with the work that they were doing in the community. And this was Daniel So, and he's an elder that's working with advocacy work for the community right now because of the oil and gas. We also found out more needs, such as people needing outhouses built, people needing home repairs done, and so we began to strategize on how we could fill those needs, and we started bringing people into the community in groups to help with the home repairs. Our ultimate goal was to get the community to work together. It was very difficult for people to feel comfortable working together with one another. There's some issues of grudges or some division between the people in the community because of things that happened over the years, and we wanted to try to help with mending some of those wounds.
During an insight session at annual conference, we saw many wonderful photos of gardening at the Liebrook Community Mission. So I know gardening is one of your focuses.
We have a big push to break that dependence barrier, the chain of dependency that the government has created and also churches have created in the area. We want to help people become self-sustainable, and through that process, the gardens is what originated as step one. And so we are actually learning how they garden, or how they used to garden, because when the boarding schools come about, they forced removal of the children from the homes. The gardens that they had on the reservation went downhill. So what we've done is started garden projects to where we get the resources and go out to the community and assist with doing garden projects. This year we received a grant from Global Food Initiative, which is a Church of the Brethren organization, and we were able to purchase a small tractor and a plow and a disc, and we have started 9 half-acre plots.
In different places?
In different places, in key locations out on the checkerboard area where we're at, in the hopes of helping people with a better diet, with a healthier diet, and understanding how to use these foods. We have people that don't know how to cook with some of the foods that we grow, and so we have cooking classes at the mission to teach them how to cook with these foods. So
now your garden is producing, and and this year you're hoping that all the other 9 gardens will.
No, actually, usually the first year or two, you would think that the water issue is our big issue in the desert. Really, our biggest issue is the soil quality.
Lack of organic matter in the soil. It's a primarily sandy soil, and so it's hard to get anything other than, you can get pumpkins to grow, you can get watermelon to grow, but to get the greens that you need for your diet, or to get corn or anything to produce at a good level to where the crops have actually matured to where they get the best nutrition, it's very difficult to do.
So usually it takes 2 to 3 years of planting and tilling back in and then adding compost, and it takes about a good 3 years to get that soil to where you're really going to have a nice productive garden.
We do have,
but it's doable. We have it at the mission. This is our 4th year in the same spot at the mission, and we have a very good garden this year. It's growing very well.
And we do have some of the 9 garden spots that are producing. I would say about 6 of the 9 are starting to show growth in the produce and stuff in the area, but it's a process. It's a time process of getting in and working the soil.
So you actually have to teach about composting, and you have to teach maybe about worm beds and some other things to.
We use all organic. We don't use any store-bought fertilizers or pesticides. We plant marigold flowers to get rid of the bugs, and so we continue that with the gardens that we're helping with out on the mission, out on the reservation.
Well, the story of Kim and Jim Thurian is a spiritual journey that is wonderful, amazing, and remarkable. They are truly living out their faith and a call to serve at the Liebrook community. Jim had a closing comment about the history of the mission that certainly applies to today.
For many years, people always thought they knew what was best for the Native Americans, and we're finding out that maybe we should have done more listening and a lot less talking with the Native American cultures.
For more information about the Liebrook Community Mission, please check out www.liebrookcommunitymission.org. This is Brent Carlson for Brethren Voices, wishing you peace.
All those who tread the path he trod, all those who tread the path he trod, all those who tread the path he trod shall be called the friends of God. May his peace begin with me.